Trust me when I say that I didn't want to record a video like this. Trust me that as I record this video on the day of the full public release of Battlefield 5, I was hoping that DICE would release a day one patch to sort out many of the issues that the game has. Trust me when I say that I'm a huge Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1 fan, and hey, I even thought that Hardline wasn't that bad. Trust me when I'm saying that I'm looking forward to recording another video in a couple of months saying how much Battlefield 5 has improved and that it's now a different game. But also trust me when I say that at full launch, Battlefield 5 is unfinished and disappointing. Battlefield 5, as you can see from the footage playing, it looks and it sounds great. And the multiplayer includes many iconic weapons and vehicles from World War II. We've got the Stuka dive bomber screaming overhead. We've got Churchill tanks crashing through the hedgerows. The guns feel good, and shooting an enemy is as satisfying as it's ever been. But that's probably where the good stuff finishes, and we've got to discuss the disappointing and simply unfinished parts of the game. As I've said, the guns feel good, but it's really difficult to identify enemies. DICE have effectively removed spotting from the multiplayer, and with all this extra detail in the maps and all this extra smoke, let alone the HUD icons that are in front of you, it can be next to impossible to see enemy soldiers even if your teammates right next to you are firing at them. Now, all this clutter might not be a problem on a high-end PC that's running at a crisp 4K monitor, but on my original PS4, just connected to a simple 1080p TV, battles become confusing and, above all, frustrating. All that extra detail makes the maps look good at a small level, but overall none of the maps are as impressive as the best of Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 4. There's no Monte Grappa, there's no Goldman's Railway, there's no Argonne Forest or Operation Locker here. All that extra trees and the foliages and the rocks, they limit the lines of sight and make it seem like you're fighting in a much smaller environment. I've got to be honest and say the maps of Battlefield 5 feel like second-rate DLC attempts. Going back to the lack of spotting, it also means that you lose the sense of the flow of the battle. Normally in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1, when you go back to the respawn screen, you can see all the spotted enemies running around and you can see your team, and then you can think, right, that's where probably most of the people are going, so I'm going to spawn in on my squad, or I'm going to spawn in on that flag to join the battle. And this is tenfold as frustrating when you're flying a plane, as you just don't know where to drop your bombs. All you can really do when you're a bomber is fly around and look for flags that are being captured and then just drop your bombs on those, because you just don't have a note. The planes are moving too fast for you to be able to spot individual or even groups of infantry to effectively bomb, let alone strafe them. We also thought that DICE was bringing back the old Conquest Scoring system where games would be much closer. But what they've done is they've gone beyond this and they've added up this catch-up mechanic where when it gets to the end of the game, whichever side's losing can capture flags faster. So what happens is when you get down to about, say, I don't know, there's 100 points left, 100 tickets left, and you think, oh, we've got this in the bag, it might be 100 to 50. All of a sudden, the enemies sort of catch up really quick. And then you find yourself in a losing position, and it just doesn't feel fair. The majestic, the fun, and above all the cinematic behemoths of Battlefield 1 are gone. They've been replaced with V1 airstrikes, which is the doodlebug, and rather oddly these can be called in by the British and the Germans, but as far as I'm aware the V1 wasn't a tactical weapon, was it? It was a strategic weapon. They were firing them at big cities. Capping all this off is scarcity and attrition. This crazy, well, in my opinion, crazy idea where you'll spawn into the game, this multiplayer shooter, with less ammo than you really need or really want, which forces you to find ammo dumps or pester support players. The really crazy bit is that when you start the game, or you start at your home kind of spawn, you'll start and there'll be an ammo dump right in front of you, which you've then got to run up and pick some ammo off. Well, just give me the ammo to start off with. I mean, come on, DICE. This is meant to be a fun multiplayer game, a piece of entertainment where you shoot people and you're giving us less ammo to start off with. You also need to have med packs to heal health, which slows you down and stops you from getting stuck into gunfights. And I know people are saying, well, it encourages you to play with your squad, but sometimes your squad buggers off and they all do different things, and you're playing as an assault and you want to take on a flag and you get hit and you go like, oh, dum-de-dum-de-dum, got to hang around, wait for the self-heal does eventually kick in up to a certain point, but if you want to fully heal you need to wander off, find a minute. You're probably dead by then anyway, or at least run out of ammo. And I've put it in the title of the video, so I've got to talk about it. What is claimed by DICE to be an immersive World War II experience is ruined by the sound of women soldiers screaming and shouting orders on the battlefield. This is political correctness gone mad, and it's a terrible distortion of historical fact. In fact, you could say this whole game is a victim of social justice warrior mentality. That's, I guess it's there at DICE. Each war story from the single-player campaign looks at different parts of the war, but it manages to denigrate the people who actually fought in those theatres, ignoring the contributions of the common soldiers who were there in an attempt to put forward an inclusive agenda that distorts what actually happened. And it judges people, judges decisions that people made 80 years ago, judges the way that people behaved 80 years ago by our standards and our norms. The intro solo war story is okay. Then you've got the really odd one where you're a member, I think it's the SBS, but you're like this criminal, that's been pulled out of prison to go on these missions behind enemy lines, when in fact the SAS and the Long Range Desert Group and the SBS, these were highly trained soldiers, highly motivated soldiers. Perhaps they weren't the ordinary run-of-the-mill soldiers, but they weren't criminals. These were good British officers and men who risked their lives and died fighting in these things. And to kind of make fun of it, to create this Guy Ritchie-esque episode, it just doesn't feel right. Then we have the one where we're attacking the heavy water plant as this lone teenage girl who manages to take on the whole of the Wehrmacht with just like throwing knives, when in fact it was a whole team of I think it was Norwegian commandos trained in England who again risked their lives, and lots of British commandos died in the attack because there was some, if you read the story of Telemark and how there was meant to be a glider attack and they crashed and they all died, and then the Norwegians had to go in. It was a whole team of men who had to go in and do that. Now you might be saying, well, it's a video game, of course they're going to take liberties with the story. Well, yeah, they are, but in Battlefield 1, the stories, I think, were a lot more sympathetic to the history. And I'm not saying the stories in Battlefield 1 were true, but they didn't distort history in the way that they have with this one. And then we have the French one with the Senegalese soldiers, which very rightly highlights the fact that the Senegalese were treated poorly by the French during the Second World War and after the Second World War as well. You can read up about it as well. But the way that it denigrates and kind of insults the French military as part of that story, it just doesn't ring true. Well, obviously it's true, but it doesn't do the subject any favours at all. So, and then we've got the multiplayer, where you've got women, Wehrmacht, and British soldiers. And correct me if I'm wrong. There were no ladies serving in the British Army. There were no ladies serving in the German Army on the front lines in combat situations, serving overseas. Women, we could not have won the Second World War without the contribution of women at home in the factories, manning AA guns, flying Spitfires, flying bombers, delivering them to the front lines. But the actual fighting was done by men. Now, I know the Russians had snipers, and I've got no problem with women being in the multiplayer, but dress them up as resistance fighters, as OSS secret agents, but don't put them in German Wehrmacht or German or British army uniforms. It's just wrong. And when you go running around and you hear these, you shoot an enemy and you get a woman scream, and it's like, no, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. And I feel it's almost like they're trying to rewrite history in this Orwellian and repulsive way. One of the things that we look forward to most with Battlefield 5, or I did anyway, was Firestorm, which is going to be Battlefield 5's Battle Royale, and it's been delayed until next year. And this is a really big mistake, and kind of you'll probably guess from the theme of this video that I kind of think that Battlefield 5 as a whole should have been delayed probably another 6 months to finish it off. So I think that all this adds up to a game that isn't ready for release, and one in which DICE have made some really disappointing changes to the core gameplay mechanics of Battlefield that we all know and love. And I'll say it again, spotting. Bring back spotting. And what makes things even worse for Battlefield 5 is that it's up against so many strong titles that take people's time and attention, and of course money away. You've got Red Dead Redemption 2, this massive time sink. Call of Duty this year, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, that does have a Battle Royale mode, is really good this year. The multiplayer is fantastic. You feel like you're in control of your own destiny in Call of Duty, whether it be Blackout or the multiplayer. In far too many times in Battlefield, you don't. And then there's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, about to be released on PlayStation 4, the granddaddy of Battle Royale games. So I really, really hope that in a couple of months' time I'll be recording another Battlefield 5 review where I'll be saying, wow, DICE have made all these changes. They've brought back some sort of spotting. The new maps we've had between now and then are amazing. The Firestorm Battle Royale mode, it beats PUBG and Blackout at their own game. But until then, I've got to say that I think that Battlefield 5 it's an unfinished and it's a very disappointing release. DICE have managed to pull a Star Wars Battlefront 2 on us. They've pulled a Call of Duty Infinite Warfare on us. And I, for one, am absolutely gutted. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'll leave you with the gameplay for the rest of this Conquest match on Hamada. And yeah, I'll see you again soon.
Objective George has been lost.
Shit!
We have taken objective dog. Objective George is ours. Know that we have lost objective easy. Good work. Objective Able taken. Attention, objective dog is now lost. Objective George is lost. Objective Fox has been lost, soldiers. We are losing objective Charlie. Nearly beaten them. Keep going. Be aware that we have lost objective Charlie. We have taken objective dog. taken objective Able.